Hello there. I'm Julia Brown, your National Board Chairperson, and with me is
Melinda Gall. I'm the Vice Chair of the AAUW Board.
We're so glad you joined us today. We have two topics that we want to discuss with you. One is the possibility of a dues increase, and the other is the possibility of a vote on changing our bylaws to eliminate the education requirement. Before we get into that, I would like to ask us to take just a moment to have a moment of silence in honor of the passing of our Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was a champion for women's rights for so many decades. And her loss is just a huge impact on our movement and the rights of women going forward. I saw a really good posting that someone did on Facebook that said, we grieve her loss today, and we put our armor back on and fight tomorrow. Because as we know, the fight for equity, the fight to empower women that AAUW has been fighting for almost 140 years has come a long way, has lots of scores in the win column, but we are far from winning that war. So we take a deep breath and renew our strength, and we fight on because our fight is just. And making a difference and having an impact for women and girls, which actually has a positive impact on entire communities, is what we are in the business of doing. So I'm going to talk for just a little bit about the fact that the board is considering a dues increase, which we'll vote on at our October board meeting. Now, you all received a notice of this possibility. It was sent to you 60 days in advance of when the board will be discussing it and taking action on it. As you know, we're looking at a range of increase of $3 to $10. Now, as you know, our last dues increase was in 2018 in the amount of $10. Before that, it had been a full decade since AAUW had a dues increase for its membership. So you may be asking, why are we considering an increase? Well, there's a need to have dues at least partially cover the expenses of the organization. And you know, for the last 3 years, that we have shared financials with you. So you know that we are not spending recklessly at the national office. We are being, in fact, very frugal in terms of what we spend, looking at cost cutting. And in fact, there has even been some downsizing as a cost savings measure. The costs, though, just as with everything, don't stay the same over time. They keep rising every year. And the dues don't go up every year, and so they're not keeping pace with those increases. Our dues cover approximately 15 to 20% of the annual budget, and they don't cover the cost of servicing membership. So it is time, as we look at the impact of COVID on our financials, and we look at the rate of our dues, for us to take a look at whether we need to increase those dues. Now, the impact that the COVID pandemic has had on grants that organizations like AAUW are able to get has been negative. There's belt and purse string tightening at foundations and at grant makers, at corporations. Furthermore, when we think about the kinds of grants that we're able to get, you should understand that those grants are for programs, for projects, for research. They're not for the cost of operating the office and maintaining it. Now, someone asked me recently, why should dues go towards such expenses as office space and staff? And at first, I thought they were pulling my leg when they asked that question, but they were really serious. Well, we can't operate an organization like AAUW or any other national organization out of the back seat of our cars. And we can't do it solely with unpaid volunteers. We have to have space, telephones, computers, printers, and paid professional staff to do the kind of work that AAUW is doing. So another question, and first let me say thank you to those who have sent in comments and questions. Part of the reason why you get the notice that the board is considering a dues increase 60 days in advance of them doing it is to give you just that opportunity, time to think about it and time to submit your comments and your questions to us. So I want to say thank you to those who have done that. And when Melinda and I finish doing our brief comments, there'll be an additional opportunity for you to ask your questions on this town hall. Because the reason we're doing this is because we want to hear from you. We want you to understand why we're having to consider this. And we'll take all of that into consideration at our board meeting next month. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Melinda to talk to you briefly about the other issue on the agenda for today.
I want to also thank you for joining us here today at the town hall, and we look forward to hearing your questions and being able to provide information to you. I've been a member of this organization for more than 30 years, so I have watched over those decades people discuss this issue of a degree requirement for membership. Those of us who have been members of this organization for a long time know that AAUW is very unique. It's different than other organizations. When you look at the work we do under our mission, we are fighting to break down barriers to education of all forms. We're looking to advocate for pay equity, protect civil rights, protect reproductive rights. We do outstanding gender equity research, and we have the distinction of being one of the world's largest resources of funding for graduate women. We support the Legal Advocacy Fund. We combat sex discrimination in higher education and the workplace, and so much more. We are an organization that does a lot for fighting for women and girls. But as part of this, in the striving for equity, we still have a barrier, and that barrier is our degree requirement. One of the statistics I was looking at in preparation for this was the fact that our membership averages 72 years of age or older. While the general population of the United States right now, half of them were born after 1980. So there is a huge gap between the general population and the membership of AAUW. So why is that important? Because AAUW needs to be thinking about that population. We've always said that we want to attract younger members. And we've realized over the years that younger members mean 50 and 40. But eventually, those people born after 1980 will become the members of AAUW. And they're different than we are. They look for inclusion in their organizations. And they believe that if you're truly an equity feminist organization, you have no barriers to membership. And it's very important for them to be inclusive. And I think that's why now it's very important for the board of directors of this organization to be the leaders of the action to change the bylaws to eliminate the barrier of an educational requirement to be a member of this organization. We hear all the time, well, if we change it, we won't be an American Association of University Women. Well, as Kim has told us over and over again, we're not American, we're international. We're not just women, we're men and women. And we will be all people fighting for equity for women and girls if we reduce the barrier and eliminate the degree requirement. So at this time, I want to turn it back over to Julia and we'll start answering your questions.
Thank you, Melinda. Let's see what we've got in terms of questions. Well, we have one that asks about the ages of members. The average age of AAUW members is 72. A fun trivia point that someone told me about 15 years ago is that AAUW members tend to live 5 to 6 years longer than the national average. And we joked about whether or not we ought to advertise that as a point for trying to get members. But seriously, I know a lot of branches have been working to try to bring in younger members, and some have actually been rather successful about that effort. Another question is how many professional staff are there, and whether they are full-time or part-time. We've greatly reduced the total staff, and we currently have 46 FTEs, that's full-time equivalents. We have not had to do a layoff or a furlough in these very difficult times. And in contrast, 3 years ago, we had 107 staff members plus interns.
I see several questions about the name, so let me talk about that again if we change the degree requirement. There is no intent at this time to change the name. As I said, our name is the American Association of University Women, but we're an international organization. We're an organization of men and women, and in the future, it is hoped that we'll be an organization of all people who are fighting for equity for women and girls. I don't know about the rest of you out there, but I would say 75% of the time I've seen a guest speaker come to one of our big events and they talk about AAUW. They think we're university professors and not just university people with university degrees. There is no intent to change the name. Talk about rebranding. AARP basically doesn't have just retired people. They go now by AARP and not their full name. So I think we'll be known as AAUW, and there will be, I don't think that's going to create any confusion for us.
Now, another question I see is, will eliminating the barrier be done only by the board or require a membership vote? AAUW's bylaws require that in order to amend the bylaws, that vote has to be by the membership. And it requires a fairly substantial percentage of votes in favor of an amendment in order for it to pass. The board does not have the legal authority to change the bylaws. That is something that is totally left to the membership. Now, just to reiterate something that Melinda said with respect to our membership, we know that it really does not require one to have a 4-year baccalaureate degree or even a 2-year associate degree to understand that women are getting paid less for the same skills and the same expertise in the workplace than men. It doesn't take someone with a college education to understand or support the mission of AAUW. And I believe that linked arm in arm, we should march down that path together, those with degrees, those without degrees. It doesn't mean if this bylaw amendment passes, it doesn't mean that AAUW will stop doing fellowships and grants. We still believe that there is a great deal of benefit in getting a higher education, but we recognize that a path to a successful career and a path to meaningfully contributing to bringing about positive change in the community does not require a college degree. We want to be relevant. We want not to be hypocrites and talking out of both sides of our mouths. As we say on the one hand that we are fighting to level the playing field for women and girls and to eliminate all the barriers to them, we really can't in good conscience from the other side of our mouth say, but we only want you to be a second-class citizen if you join AAUW and you don't have a degree. That's not fair, it's not right, and it's not equity. Let's take a look at the questions again.
I noticed some questions, a lot about this has been voted on before to change the membership requirement. Well, that is true. It's been voted on many times, and including it was changed in 2005 from a 4-year degree to a 2-year degree or equivalent. The way that a change comes now that we are in one person, one vote is that any member can bring up a bylaws change. In this time, the board has decided that they want to take on this issue. They've never done that before. It will require a, and you guys always correct me on this, 2/3 vote of the membership to change the bylaws. Now that we've had votes before and they've been kind of split, but there's never been a huge turnout of the membership to vote on this issue. So to say we know how the membership feels is not true because we get 5 to 10% of the people voting. So we're hoping this time that we get a lot of people to speak to this issue so we can truly see where the membership lies. We've been hearing from some state presidents that they feel that having this barrier to membership is hurting them. I also saw a question that said, well, a lot of branches let people in even though they don't have degrees. Well, they're not legitimate members, and we want to make them legitimate. If they want to come to our branch meetings and be part of our fight for equity, we want to make them full members and equal to the rest of us.
Now I see another question that says, given that our average age of membership is 72, won't a dues increase disproportionately impact this population who are often on a fixed income? No, I don't believe so. first of all, during these times of COVID, I think we're all on a fixed income. And let's look at the range of the dues increase that we're talking about. It says $3 to $10. And just for the sake of discussion, let's look at $10. If the dues were increased $10, that's less than 20 cents a week. So that's not going to adversely or disproportionately impact any of our members. I see another question actually that asks, why aren't we proposing an even higher increase? Because most professional organizations membership organizations have much higher dues. Well, we're not going there yet.
Yeah. But let me tell you something too about the language of fixed incomes. If you have a job, you're on a fixed income too. Not just our members of 72 years and older are on fixed incomes. Young people get really bothered when they hear us say, well, we're on fixed incomes. We're also on fixed expenses. Our houses are paid for, our children are through college, and so our younger members have a whole lot more expenses, and they find the money to support the organizations that they think are worthwhile. And we know our organization is worth $10 a year more than what we're paying now.
Now, here's a question that asks about what the data shows relative to a membership dues increase and how that will impact renewals. And same question on elimination of the degree requirement. Back when AAUW voted to change the degree requirement, allowing for a 2-year degree, my understanding is there was quite a large number of people who said, if this passes, we're going to leave, we're not going to renew our membership. And the data shows that that didn't happen. Why would somebody leave over 20 cents a week? If you are really committed to the mission of AAUW and want to be part of our effort to empower women and to eliminate the barriers, then yeah, it might take a little doing to redo your budget, but I feel certain that it won't take a lot of changing of your budget in order to accommodate an increase in dues.
Julia, it's Kim Churches, and hello, everyone. I'm delighted so many of you joined today, and simply thought perhaps Melinda and Julia could share some of the other tremendous member leaders and former board leaders who've joined you in this effort. There are a couple of questions about how we're going to be marketing and sharing this information with members. Obviously, today is one example of it, and this is being recorded and will be available on the membership page. But perhaps you and Melinda could share some of how the Racial Equity and Justice Working Group, made up of member leaders, will be helping us to motivate members to reconsider their past votes on this issue to help us finally remove the degree requirement.
I'm sure we both want to speak to that. Let me just say something first, Melinda, then I'll turn it over to you. I've noticed from looking at the list of participants on today's call that we have not only current board members on the call, I see a number of former national board members and officers on the call, and a number of past national presidents. And speaking of past national presidents of the national board, I recently invited the last 5 national presidents to join our efforts with respect to looking at racial and social justice and that impact on our degree requirement. And they are all in agreement that this requirement in our bylaws needs to go. It needs to be eliminated. And in terms of doing outreach to branches, to state affiliates, and membership, we are going to be doing a sustained outreach effort led by your national board. I don't believe, except for the last time we voted on this, that there had ever been an effort on the part of the full national board to move this forward. And so we all believe that this degree requirement has long ago outlived its usefulness. Melinda?
We have a National Inclusion and Equity Committee, and that committee is currently finishing a toolkit. You know, we love our toolkits because it sure helps us. They're finishing a toolkit that they're going to send out to all the branches on inclusion and equity. And part of that toolkit is going to be taking a stand on our diversity statement, which is, there shall be no barriers to full participation in this organization on the basis of gender, race, creed, age, sexual orientation, national origin, disability, or class. They also want us to remember that diversity is critical to AAUW's mission. We recognize that issues of equity, from fair pay to sexual assault to access to health care, affect all women, and we recognize that women in marginalized groups often disproportionately experience the effects of these issues. To succeed in empowering women and girls through advocacy, education, philanthropy, and research, we must have diverse voices contributing different perspectives. So look in the fall for the toolkit so that they can help you reach out and become the organizations we know that you all want to be, because we hear it over and over again from branches. We want more members. We want younger members. We want members of all ethnicities and all races. But how do we do that? And so our Inclusion and Equity Committee is going to once again try to help us achieve this goal of making AAUW more inclusive. I see a lot of questions about what are the dues going to be used for, and let's talk about that. Kim Churches has been marvelous at getting us to a position where now, if we don't have the money, we don't do it. So what is the money going to be used for? It's going to be used to pay our current expenses and to do the things we know you all want done. Now, I will accept the fact that I hear from many of you that it's very difficult to get a hold of staff now. So I want to remind you that we have about 45 staff and we have, about 60,000 members. So it is a little more difficult to get directly to a staff member. So I'm hoping, and I'm working with our state presidents, I'm hoping we can build a better resource guide and a better system for funneling up your issues and questions up through the states to national so that we can get them answered quicker. Because you can imagine our staff members, they're pretty much there trying to answer, but there's thousands and thousands of you that are contacting them. And so they do the best they can as quick as they can. And so hopefully in the future, with the leadership of the state presidents, that we're going to try to work on that problem and get quicker answers back to you.
I also see a question asking about the status of student associates and whether or not college students will have to pay the full dues. No, we're not proposing to increase the dues for our college university members. And those students at those member institutions don't pay full dues because they're not full members of AAUW. remember, we unfortunately still have that degree requirement. And as students at a member university or institution, they don't have to pay dues.
I see a lot of questions too about if we change the degree requirement, do we anticipate increasing membership? That is not the goal of this change, because no, it's not going to increase our membership, because it didn't happen when we added men. It didn't happen when we changed the degree from 4 to 2 years. What it does is it basically makes us the equity organization that we claim to be, and it makes us inclusive. And so, no, we're not doing it to try to increase the membership. We're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
And here's a question that says, with declining membership numbers, we probably need to reach out to corporations and foundations for revenue to help fund our wonderful projects. What is keeping us from getting more money from these sources? Well, one of the things that's keeping us from getting more money from these sources is the fact that there are so many organizations operating within this field. So the competition for such funding is pretty steep. Another thing that keeps us from getting more money from these organizations or from these funders is because we have this degree requirement. We've been told by some potential funding organizations that they don't want to have their name associated with an organization that differentiates or discriminates in this way.
I'll only add to that, Julia. We also, this is Kim Churches again. As a reminder, if you look at the $400 billion a year donated to American philanthropy, only about 1.6% of those dollars goes to fund women and girls organizations directly. And we have a lot of competition in that there are many, many, many organizations like AAUW working to further gender equity and to help all women and girls. So if we get a slant against us because they do not believe we are living our mission fully because of the education requirement, they can move on to another 350 other places to donate their funds.
Okay, I want to clear up the confusion I caused when I said about the 2/3 vote. Okay, we have to reach our quorum. And Kim, correct me, what is our quorum for voting?
5%.
5%, and then it's 2/3 of the people voting. So we've got to get the 5% voting, and then 2/3 of those have to vote in favor of the change. What we really want is more than 5% voting. We want to really hear the voices of all the members out there of what they want to do.
Now, here's another question. Was not the degree requirement reduced to a 2-year degree for membership? If so, has the change substantially increased membership? And yes, as Melinda and I have both commented on, there was some years ago a vote to change the bylaws to allow for a 2-year associate degree for membership. But let me be clear. There is no thought that eliminating the degree requirement, either or changing it back when it was changed to 2-year, there's no thought that there is going to be a floodgate that opens with people flooding in to join AAUW because we have eliminated the education requirement. Yes, we believe that there will be some people who join as a result of that. But more importantly, we're talking about AAUW's brand, its reputation, how it looks in the world, what people are saying about us. And they're saying, in fact, even some of our members are saying that we're being big hypocrites. Don't think that eliminating the degree requirement is going to mean that hundreds of people are going to rush in and join us. In fact, back when we voted to allow men to be members of the organization, there was an ugly rumor that was running around within the organization that it was all part of some big conspiracy, and men were going to come rushing in and by the hundreds and the thousands and join and take over the organization and change its mission and change its name. And of course, nothing even like that is remotely true. We have men who were members of AAUW because they agree with the mission of AAUW and they support what we are trying to do. We're working together hand in hand, arm in arm. And we want the same thing for members who would be able to come in with no degree, those who support the mission and the vision of AAUW.
And I just want to mention, I saw somewhere in all of this, you're not answering our questions. We've got over 200 questions and 468 participants. So we're trying. Julia and I are reading as fast as we can. I see, hopefully after this is over, we can go back and capture some of your questions and do some talking points on them to answer them. We really appreciate you putting the questions in. But like I said, there's over 200 and Julia and I are scrolling as fast as we can. I do notice, again, on the dues, the board is considering all options still. The options of a one-time dues increase somewhere between $3 and $10, a 3-year increase, some amount. So we're still considering all those options, and that's why we want to hear from you what you think would be the best method. And a lot of you have put that into the question, so we appreciate that. And I'm looking for some other questions now.
Yeah, trying to find some that we haven't answered.
You know what? One other suggestion might be, we've written up a lot of this. I know the board has been working on that with the Racial Equity and Justice Working Group and in past years with past board members as well. And that may be something we could actually send out. This is, again, being recorded. Many of the questions that are being asked have been asked and answered in the Q&A or orally by Julia and Melinda. So as this will be recorded, it means it will live on the website, that you can utilize it in future times as well to be able to rehear the answers.
Okay. The vote, I saw another question. The vote on the dues increase will be by the board in October. The vote on the bylaws change will be by the membership in the spring of next year. And it will be the one person, one vote, so every member will have an opportunity to vote on this issue. We don't have the conventions anymore. We all get a vote.
You might want to suggest one more thing here is many of you are retyping in the exact same questions that have already been answered. So if you go into Q&A, you'll be able to see answered questions live or ones that Julia and Melinda have offered up orally. So because we're getting lots of duplicate member questions, which is great, but it makes it hard for them to answer some of the 174 questions that still exist.
And in briefly going through the questions, I see a lot of you telling us, well, we dues increase, we could lose members. I've seen people will leave if we change the degree requirement. Some people say that they will join if they have the degree requirement. I will tell you, in my time in AAUW, I've done surveys of the membership many times, and we're going to have something in every category. So if we lose people, we'll probably pick them up, but we've never seen anything substantial. when we've had dues increases, when we changed the degree requirement, when we added men to the membership, nothing changed substantially. It did change, but nothing changed substantially.
There's a good comment in the chat wondering if our endowment, which feeds our fellowships and grants, obviously helps to make AAUW distinct from other women's organizations, and the question if they would be affected by a change by reducing the educational requirement to membership.
No change there. No change. That is what makes us unique. We sit on a huge endowment that's not going away. That part of AAUW is not going away. What the dues increase is going to help fund is all of that advocacy work you've grown to love from AAUW over the years. But that endowment is sitting there and it gives lots of money every year and it's not going away.
Well, instead of having an answer, I actually have a question. I think it's really curious that AAUW, when we think about local elections, state elections, national elections, I don't mean within the organization, I mean actual elections for political candidates. AAUW members vote higher than the national average. Yet we've had to change our bylaws to reduce the quorum because we have so few people who would register for the annual meeting and to vote on things. It's now down to 5%. And generally, at every national convention, everybody is sweating bullets, wondering, are we going to make the quorum? Because if we don't hit the number that's in the bylaws, the law will not allow us to have that annual meeting and conduct business. So all of that would have to be deferred to another time and do the announcements all over again. So I'm curious, why is it that an organization that has the ability to have such a direct impact, positive impact on women and girls, have members who won't show up to vote in their own elections? Does anybody know what that's about? If so, send me an email, boardchair@aauw.org, because I'm confused about that.
Let me address the questions we're getting about life members. If you're a life member and you've paid your dues for life, this dues increase doesn't affect you. You're paid. Now, if you want to become a life member, you're going to have to pay at the new rate with the dues increase. So if you're thinking about life membership, might be the time you want to do it now. But it's not going to affect those of you who are already life members. And people pointed out also that we're talking national dues, which are currently $59. I know many of you pay state and branch dues. Some people don't pay branch dues. Some people don't pay state dues, but some do. So I know there's different amounts all around the country. There's no standard branch dues. There's no standard state dues. We're talking about the $59 that comes to the national organization. Look, I'm trying to see, a lot of people have asked questions about expenses and things like that. AAUW does have a presence in Washington, D.C. We've always felt that was important for our mission. We do currently have office space that is on a long-term lease. Kim and her team have done everything they can to get that down to a manageable amount, and the staff is at a manageable size right now. The expenses, let me tell you, Kim doesn't spend something unless it's absolutely necessary. But when we're talking about the dues, some of you asked questions about, well, how much does it cost to service the members and those things. So think about what this team does with your dues. They basically make sure that all the membership dues are collected and distributed. They make sure that they're doing all the webinars and training. They're still doing the advocacy, working with other like-minded organizations, working with members of Congress and the legislatures to push our issues. There is a lot that they do each and every day, in addition to making sure that your branches have what they need and your states have what they need and each of the members has what they need. But we really want them up there, not trying to figure out where the lost check is, although that's important. We want them up there trying to figure out how we pass laws to make things better for women and girls. We want them up there doing research. We want them doing all of the important work. So that's what we as an organization have to figure out, is maybe a little bit of how we work with our branch and state leadership to take some of the burden off of the national staff that can be done by leaders that have experience and that can help each other. I was with South Carolina this weekend doing their leadership conference, and there were questions about a webinar and about a website. Why can't we help each other with that? So we're looking to try to make things better for you and then free up our staff and our money to do what's better for all women and girls. And finally, a question was asked about if we gave an exact amount of the dues. Since the board votes on that, we don't really have an exact amount we're putting to the membership. We put a range in there because we wanted to hear from you. We wanted to know what you think the board should do on this one.
Melinda, it's Kim again. Sorry for plugging in here, but just so everyone is aware, there were a lot of questions about how many members and what that brings in right now. We're an over $16 million annual budget. When I came to AAUW, we were an over $24 million budget. So we've cut down to really exactly, excuse me, as Melinda said, get our numbers in check to be able to meet a budget on the revenue side and on the expense side. Your dues, our member paying dues, provides less than $3 million of that $16 million budget. So $2.9 million a year. It costs, and we've done the math on this, $3.9 million a year to provide member services. That it does not just connect, but all of the work on the advocacy side, on the program side, interest in affiliate work, in IRS work, financial work, the MSD, the website, technologies, etc. So just for clarity here, if you just look at member to member, right now, it actually in our budget is sadly a losing proposition. We want to continue to keep member services up as best we can with the 46 full-time staff we have today.
And a couple of questions on if there's a dues increase, will it be tax deductible? A small portion of our dues goes to the Action Fund. That's the only portion not tax deductible. So I anticipate, Kim, correct me if I'm wrong, that the dues increase will go to the deductible portion of our dues.
Yeah, it would probably be an increase on like sides so that it's a very, very small amount going to the Action Fund and the majority of it being tax deductible, correct? Just as it's always been.
Now, just in case any of you joined a little late or somehow didn't hear this, let me reiterate. What we're considering on the dues increase is a range of $3 to $10. The board will be discussing and voting on this at its meeting in October. And just by way of example, if we were to have a $10 increase, We're talking about a little less than 20 cents a week increase for members. So not a huge amount of money, not a really big increase, but enough of an increase that it helps AAUW's budget.
There's a couple of questions about the endowment, and you need to understand that the endowment is built on restricted funds. So the endowment can't be used to just pay for anything at AAUW. It's limited to dealing with the endowment and the grants and fellowships. I will tell you, Kim and her team have looked at this. I served on this board in the previous administration. We had lawyers look at this. Every dime in that endowment fund has been examined to make sure that it's endowed and not available for use for advocacy. And we've done a good job in looking at that. But all of that money, all of those endowments, those branches created in the name of women and branch names, all of those have a purpose, and it's restricted to the grants and fellowships and the staff hours that go to just grants and fellowship. We can't use it to pay other staff members who are doing the advocacy work. And sorry to talk so much, Julia.
No.
I want to also address this about education. You know, this organization has always been about education. That endowment shows how strong our members have felt about education. But although not everybody has access to education, we've advanced a lot for women in general, not women of color, but women in general, to where more than 50% of the college population is women. Women of color still struggle, and we're working on that. So while education is still very key to our organization, equity over the time has become something that's important to AAUW members. And I think when we started the Legal Advocacy Fund, and that was so controversial, we didn't want to get involved in litigation, we saw how necessary it was because we were educating women and they were still getting held back with the glass ceiling. It's the same for the equity issue. It is, AAUW has a focus now that's very important, and that's providing equity. And so we're not turning away from education. I told you that endowment's there. We're just moving forward with what is necessary now, and that's a fight for equity. And I just saw a question pop up. We will always advocate for women to get degrees because we know having an education is part of what helps you advance. But education is expensive. Not everybody has that opportunity. And so we want to be able to include other voices in our fight for equity. Kim, do you see anything else that we need to address?
Melinda, you know, I just want to add a point. I'm actually going to just turn on my video just so I can say hi to everybody and know that I'm not just some talking head in the background, which can be a little creepy. You know, the one other thing that I think it's important to say about the endowment is that we are audited regularly and we have clean audits on our financial statements. And that's very, very important. It's important to you all. It's important to me. I've worked in nonprofits for 30 years and I want to know that I am working on behalf of an organization with proper checks and balances and that is doing its due diligence. And so exactly as Melinda said, we are audited. We have financial checks and balances and accountability and transparency in place to make sure that we are fulfilling our endowment to the donor intent. And we absolutely cannot utilize those funds for anything other than for graduate and doctoral education and grants. There's also a question about where to find answered questions. Most of them have been orally answered or typed and sent so that everybody could see. Again, this is being recorded. You will be able to refer back to it. And furthermore, this is one way of reaching membership, to hear directly from your board leaders, but there will be messages in writing. There will be taped videos. There will be Q&As sent out over the course of the next several weeks from the Racial Equity and Justice Working Group that Julia Brown mentioned, as well as from the board. So there will be plenty of opportunities to continue to discuss this. And just given the timing too, I will also say there is another webinar that I did a couple of weeks ago that you can find under 2020 Convening on the website, or by clicking on the membership tab on the website in the upper right corner. That one is called Policy versus Practice, and it also gets into a lot of the issues we've talked about today.
Well, we have 4 minutes left. I want to thank you all again for joining us today. I want to thank you for your thoughtful comments, questions, and suggestions. We know that, in fact, the questions are still coming in. And we know that we, unfortunately, weren't able to answer all of them in a 60-minute block of time. But as Melinda pointed out, the staff and board will be reading through these and providing responses to those that weren't answered live or that we didn't type answers to during the town hall. And all of that information, along with the video of this town hall, will be available on the website. Thank you again for all you do for empowering women and eliminating barriers for women and girls. And in case you can't read this button, it says, if every woman voted. So November the 3rd, whatever your bent is, be sure and vote. Today, by the way, is National Register to Vote Day in the U.S. There is still an opportunity, I think, in every state to register for the upcoming general election in November. If you know someone who is not registered, if you yourself are not registered, please exercise your right to vote by getting registered and encouraging those who may not be to do so as well. Melinda, parting words?
Yes, I do. Thank you, each and every one of you, for taking the time to be on this town hall discussion. I know you're the ones that really care about this organization and keep it going. I'm passionate about AAUW. I know you're passionate about AAUW. And together, we're going to solve these issues and hopefully solve the problem of equity for women and girls. So thank you for participating. And we're hopefully will answer all your questions in the next few weeks.
Onward and upward, AAUW.
With that, again, as a reminder, I want to say that this is being recorded, and in a couple days, it will be uploaded to the 2020 Convening series on the AAUW.org website, as well as on the membership page, which you can find in the top right of your AAUW.org website. Enormous thanks to 2 extraordinary leaders, Melinda Gall and Julia Brown, for your keen insights, for your ability to keep moving AAUW forward today and well into the future. Everyone stay well, stay safe, and we'll see you on a future Zoom webinar.
That's right. Keep social distancing, keep wearing those masks, be kind to each other, be safe. Thank you.